Hello, family. Welcome to Stories with Pablo. Please subscribe and leave us a like. It means the world to us. Also, leave us a comment and share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for doing so. The sun dipped low behind the jagged peaks surrounding the quiet village of Nandala, casting long shadows over the clay walls and thatched roofs. The narrow dirt streets buzzed softly with the footsteps and murmurs of villagers finishing their day's work. Smoke curled in lazy spirals from evening fires where families would soon gather for their meager dinner. At the edge of the village, in a ramshackle house hidden behind an ancient fig tree, sat a young woman named Amara. She was barely 16, her dark eyes deep pools of melancholy, framed by tangled raven-black hair that shimmered faintly under the dying sun. Her hands, small and delicate, bore the faint stains of soot and grief. Amara was an orphan. Her mother had died giving birth to her, and her father had vanished into the wilderness years ago, swallowed by the unforgiving wilds of the hinterlands. Since then, she had lived under the guardianship of her stepmother, Njeri, a woman as cold and cruel as the winds that whipped through the barren outskirts. Njeri's face was lined with years of bitterness and harshness, her sharp cheekbones casting thin shadows that deepened her cold, slate-gray eyes. Her ebony hair was always pulled back tightly, not a strand out of place, much like her unforgiving demeanor. To the villagers, she was a pillar of strength, but to Amara, she was the embodiment of sorrow. Amara! Njeri's voice cracked like a whip across the courtyard. Amara stirred from her thoughts and rose slowly, her knees reminding her of the cold, hard floor beneath. She wiped her palms on her worn skirt and stepped outside the dim comfort of the home. Njeri stood commanding and unforgiving in the doorway, arms crossed over a threadbare shawl. "You cannot stay idle forever. We need to prepare for tomorrow." Amara looked at the almost empty table before her, a lone bowl with leftovers of millet porridge, a cracked cup stained with yesterday's tea. "The market will be busy. I can sell the baskets you told me to make." Njeri's lips curled into a tight smile, one devoid of warmth. "Selling baskets won't feed this house for long. That's why I've spoken to the families in town. You will be married soon." Amara's heart faltered. Married? To whom? Njeri's eyes glinted with a sinister resolve. "A man named Kamau. Poor, like us, but honest and hard-working. He lives in Maru town. The match is good. He will provide for you." Amara's chest tightened. She had heard whispers of Kamau, a man with simple means, a farmer struggling to bring yield from stubborn earth. She thought of the years of lonely nights and relentless toil ahead. "But I have no say." Her voice cracked. Njeri's tone turned cold, unyielding. "You are a girl with no family left. This is what is best. You will marry Kamau, and your suffering will end." A sudden shadow passed across Amara's face, a flicker of defiance burning in her dark eyes. She bowed her head, fighting to keep the tears at bay, but deep inside, a storm was gathering. That night, under a blanket of stars, Amara sat by the embers of the dying fire, clutching a worn leather-bound book she'd found in the ruins of her father's old hut. It was said to contain secrets, stories of a man who was no ordinary farmer. She whispered softly to herself, "They do not know, they do not see. Kamau is not the man they think." The night held its breath. The night air in Nandala was thick with the scent of earth and wild jasmine. The cicadas sang their relentless lullabies, a chorus that accompanied Amara's restless thoughts as she traced a faded map ink within the worn pages of the leather-bound book. The delicate script was barely legible in the firelight, but her eyes burned with determination. She did not understand everything, but one thing was clear. Kamau was no ordinary man. Hidden beneath rumors of hardship and poverty, he bore a secret life shaped by wealth and influence, a reality carefully concealed behind the mask of a struggling farmer. A whisper beneath the moonlight. Before dawn, Amara slipped quietly from the tiny house, clutching the book to her chest. Her bare feet sank into the damp earth, cool against her skin. The village slept, save for a few dogs barking distantly and the slow rustle of leaves stirred by the night breeze. She moved swiftly but with purpose, crossing the crooked path that led to the dusty main road. Her mind clouded with questions, a storm brewing within. Why was she being forced to marry a man to whom she felt no connection? Why had Njeri shut her away like a prisoner? The early light began to seep through the trees as Amara climbed a low hill overlooking the village. From this vantage point, She could see Maru Town, its lights fading before the sun's rising glow. Kamau's home was somewhere there, among the clustered huts and trading posts. Her fingers trembled as she traced the edges of a photograph pressed between the pages of the book, a faded image of a man dressed not in the threadbare clothes of a farmer, but in sharp, elegant attire. The confident gaze in the photograph locked with Hayes, stirring a mix of fear, curiosity, and hope. "Kamau," she whispered, "who are you really?" Morning in the village. Back in the village, morning brought with it the harsh reality of Njeri's demands. The clatter of pots and the rhythmic pounding of grain against stone echoed from the house as Amara was summoned to prepare for the market day. Njeri watched her with an unyielding gaze. "We must speak plainly. The arrangements are settled. Kamau arrives this evening to meet you." Amara's breath hitched. "Tonight?" "Yes," Njeri snapped. "There will be no delay." Amara clenched her fists, feeling the chains of fate tighten. The market of secrets. The market was a vibrant tapestry of color and sound. Vendors shouted their wares, fragrant spices, worn textiles, freshly caught fish, and the air was rich with a mix of sweat and earth that marked a day of hard labor. Amara wove between the stalls, a basket of woven reeds in her arms. She sold what she could, exchanging the few coins earned for a simple meal. Her thoughts, however, were elsewhere. Every moment was weighted by the impending meeting with Kamau. Among the crowd, Amara spotted a figure, a man who moved with a grace that belied the ruggedness around him. His clothes were plain, but his posture was regal, his gaze sharp and observant. Could it be him? A sudden voice beside her startled her from her thoughts. "Are you Amara?" She turned, heart pounding. Standing before her was a slender woman with warm brown skin and eyes like polished amber. Her clothes were finely embroidered, hinting at status but dusted with the common grime of travel. "My name is Alira," the woman said softly. "I was sent by Kamau's family. There are things you must know, things your stepmother is hiding." Secrets unveiled. That evening, when Kamau finally arrived, the village buzzed with whispered speculation. Njeri greeted him coldly, while Amara's heart thudded in her chest. Kamau's eyes held a depth that disarmed her. Beneath the modest clothing was a confident presence of someone used to command and respect. "My apologies for the abruptness," Kamau said gently, "but I understand there have been many misunderstandings." Amara looked to Njeri, whose face remained a mask of silence. Alira slipped a note discreetly into Amara's hand. As Njeri busied herself with preparations, Amara unfolded the note. "I am not the man they say. Ask questions. Truth is a key." The sky was painted in bruised hues, violet, blood orange, and fading gold, as dusk embraced the village of Nandala. The sense of urgency in the air was palpable, as if the very earth held its breath in anticipation of what was to come. The arrival. A battered cart creaked heavily as it trundled down the narrow gate road into the compound. Villagers peeked from behind hasty curtains and cracked shutters, whispering among themselves. Kamau had arrived. His silhouette was simple but striking, broad shoulders bent slightly under weight of burdens not carried upon his frame alone. He was garbed in muted earth tones, a worn shirt, trousers hand-stitched but strong, and boots caked in the dust of the long journey from Maru Town. But there was a dignity in his step, a measured calm that seemed to command silence despite the crowded eyes watching his every move. Njeri's command. "Welcome," Njeri said, her voice hard and clipped, standing at the house's threshold with arms crossed like a gatekeeper of fate. Kamau inclined his head, eyes dark and steady. "Thank you." Without delay, Njeri swept past him into the small kitchen, where fire sputtered weakly. Amara lingered by the doorway, heart hammering against her rib cage. She studied Kamau's face, the square jaw dusted with a day's growth of beard, eyes deep brown and thoughtful, lips set in a faint line of determination. "Amara," Kamau said gently, his voice unexpectedly soft, "I am honored to meet you." Amara nodded cautiously but said nothing. A moment of unease. Njeri's sharp eyes narrowed. "We should speak plainly," she said, slipping back into the room. "Marriage is a serious bond. There is no room for hesitation." Kamau met her stare without flinching. "I agree. And yet, I want Amara's happiness to be part of this bond." The room fell silent like a stone dropped in a still lake. Amara's lips parted, and for the first time that day found her voice. If it is happiness you seek from me, then we must speak openly. Njeri's face darkened. There is nothing to discuss. Kamau's gaze softened as he turned to Amara. If you have questions, I will answer them. The revelation. At that moment, Alira appeared behind Amara, holding out the leather-bound book. This belongs to you, she said softly. It contains the truth about Kamau. His real name is Kamau, and he is the sole heir to a vast fortune in the city. Njeri's face paled briefly, flickering with something unreadable. Amara's eyes widened. You mean he is not poor? Kamau nodded slowly. I come from a family that owns orchards and transport business. But I left all that behind to live simply and honestly because he hesitated, because I wished to build a life on my own terms. A clash of worlds. Njeri's voice trembled with anger and fear. You tricked me. You wanted my daughter, my ward, for your wealth. Kamau shook his head. No, I wanted her heart. I wished for Amara to be loved, not bought. Amara looked from Kamau, now somehow taller in her eyes, to Njeri, whose chest heaved with righteous fury. Why did you hide it? Amara asked quietly, pinching the edges of the book. Kamau sighed. Because I feared my wealth would imprison me, and the truth might bind her in chains of expectation. The torn heart. The weight of this moment pressed down on Amara's young shoulders. She felt caught between worlds, between poverty and wealth, freedom and duty, bitterness and hope. Tears glistened on her lashes. I don't know what to believe in them all. Kamau stepped forward, gently taking her hand. Let us start from truth. Amara, let us find a way to write a new story, together. The night air hung heavy with the scent of burning wood and crushed jasmine flowers. Inside the dimly lit room, flickering shadows from the hearth danced along the cracked mud walls. The flicker of flame seemed to echo the turmoil inside Amara's heart, a relentless conflict between hope and despair. The first conversation. Kamau sat beside Amara, the leather-bound book resting between them on the rough-hewn wooden stool. The room was small, scarcely larger than their shared anxieties. Tell me everything, Amara said quietly, her voice rough with emotion. About who you really are. About why you hid everything. Kamau's eyes softened as he reached out to hold her trembling hands. It is a story of sacrifice, he began, and of freedom sought in places where chains should not bind. Kamau's truth. His tale unfolded like the slow weaving of a tapestry, rich with color, shadow, and hope. Born into the powerful Mwangi family, Kamau was the only child of a wealthy entrepreneur whose sprawling empire extended from the city's markets to fruit orchards miles away. Privileged, shielded, but restless, Kamau had dreamed of a life not dictated by expectations or wealth. I grew up seeing people as numbers, as assets, he explained, eyes distant. The world my family created was one of privilege, yes, but also of isolation. He paused. I left it all behind to find a life where my worth would be measured not by money, but by my actions and the people I loved. Amara listened, her gaze drifting to the book's worn edges, feeling the weight of his past pressing delicately against the promise of their future. Njeri's hidden agendas. Meanwhile, just beyond the flickering glow, Njeri crouched outside the small window, her thoughts a tangle as dense as the shadows wrapped around her. Bitter, torn between survival and pride, her formidable facade cracked under the pressure of uncertainty. Her voice was low but firm when she spoke to the night. This was never just about wealth. It was about control, about securing what little I have left. Njeri's past was as difficult as Amara's, but where a stepdaughter sought freedom, Njeri sought preservation of her dignity, her place, her life amidst a world that had offered them so few choices. A shared meal, tense and raw. The three gathered around a rough wooden table for a modest meal. Stew simmered with wild vegetables, flatbread baked on the fire's embers, and freshly drawn water. Conversation was sparse, words measured as fragile threads stretched between old wounds and tentative hope. Kamau caught Amara's eye. If we are to be partners, there must be trust. Amara nodded slowly, her heart an unreadable maze of emotions. Njeri, clutching her shawl tightly, quietly challenged. Trust is earned, not given freely. The village's murmurs. Outside the walls, the village whispered. Rumors of Kamau's arrival had ignited speculation. Why would the son of a rich family choose to marry an orphan? Was there more beneath the surface? And how would this union shift the delicate fabric of their tight-knit community? Elders pondered quietly in their huts, and children chased each other with laughter oblivious to the growing tension. For Amara, the path forward was veiled in uncertainty, but a spark of something new flickered in the dark. Cultural rhythms and rituals. As night deepened, an ancient drumbeat echoed through the village, a call to ritual and tradition. Marriage, no matter the silence or fury, was a sacred rite, woven deeply into the members of their culture. The trials ahead would not be simply personal but communal. Amara's story was now encoded in the dance of ancestors, in the songs sung by women in the moonlight, and in the eyes of strangers who watched her every move. The early morning sun filtered through the woven reeds of the small window, casting delicate patterns on the mud floor. The village had returned to its quiet rhythm, but inside the modest house where Amara lived, the air was thick with unspoken fears and fragile hopes. The price of silence. Amara rose before dawn, thoughts like a tempest swirling in her mind. The engagement ceremony had passed, binding her publicly to Kamau, yet the weight of her stepmother's cold gaze still pressed heavily. She remembered the sharp words from their last confrontation. "You have no right to dream beyond your station," Njeri had said bitterly, the edges of her voice breaking with long-harbored pain. "You belong here, and it is your duty to accept what is given." Amara clenched her fists. "But what if I want something more?" Njeri's silhouette darkened the doorway. "You will break our family, our name, if you chase shadows." Kamau's resolve. As Amara prepared her small bundle of belongings for the journey to Maru Town, Kamau entered quietly. "I know this is difficult," he said softly, "but you must understand why I chose this path. I wanted to live a life unburdened by wealth's expectations." He reached for her hand, his fingers strong and warm. "Together, we can build something real." Amara met his gaze, searching for truth beneath layers of privilege and sacrifice. The village's judgment. Outside, the village buzzed with rumor and speculation. Some whispered of Kamau's true identity with awe, others questioned the wisdom of a marriage. Elder Mwangi confronted Njeri in the village square, his voice low but firm. "This is a turning point. Tradition must bend for the future, or break." Njeri's jaw tightened. "I do what I must for Amara's survival." The journey begins. With dawn breaking anew, Amara and Kamau set out toward Maru Town. The path was dusty and winding, marked by the footprints of those who had traveled before them, carrying dreams and burdens alike. As they walked side by side, the future stretched uncertain but full of promise. The horizon blushed with the first light of dawn as Amara stood just outside the walled compound of a childhood home. The wind teased the loose ends of a cotenge, carrying the faint scent of oath and wildflowers. Beside her, Kamau waited patiently, eyes calm but full of unspoken expectation. Farewell to shadows. Njeri emerged, standing rigid in the courtyard, her face set like cracked stone. She spoke with the weight of years pressing down. "Remember, Amara," her voice was fierce yet fragile, "you are our family's hope and burden now. Do not forget where you come from." Amara's throat tightened. "I won't forget." Njeri's hand trembled briefly as she adjusted the shawl over her shoulders. Then, abruptly, she turned away, retreating into the dim house where loneliness awaited. Kamau gently took Amara's hand, lacing their fingers together. "Let us walk forward," he murmured. "Together." The road to Maru Town. Their journey began under the broad canopy of acacia and baobab, the dusty path winding like a promise through golden fields. Villagers from neighboring communities greeted Kamau with respect, some nodding knowingly as if they bore secrets of their own. Amara maintained a quiet vigil beside Kamau, the strange mixture of hope and fear swirling inside her. "Will they accept me there?" she asked one evening as they set up a small fire beneath a sky teeming with stars. Kamau's eyes reflected the flickering flames. "Maru Town will question many things, but your courage will carve a path." Arrival at Maru Town. Maru was a bustling mosaic of life, a place where dusty roads met swirling marketplaces, where traders from distant lands hawked spices, clothes, and metalwork. The air was thick with the scent of roasting coffee and wet earth. Kamau led Amara through narrow streets lined by ornate doorways carved with symbols of ancient clans. The house they approached was imposing, a heritage home belonging to Kamau's family. The masked reality. Inside, the walls bore pictures of ancestors, deep eyes seeming to follow Amora's every move. Servants hurried through the halls with practiced grace, and the scent of incense lingered. Kamau's father, a stern man with steel-gray eyes and hair like woven silver, greeted them with a nod weighed down by expectation. "You've brought her as promised." His voice was grave yet measured. Kamau dipped his head respectfully. "Yes, father." Amora's heart pounded as a new life began beneath the shadows of wealth and tradition. Njeri's silent watch. Back in Nandala, Njeri chose to remain, caught in the tangled web of her own choices. Her nightly prayers to the ancestors wove between defiance and despair. "This is not just about survival," she admitted softly in the dark. "It is about reclaiming lost honor." Her resolve hardened, plans stirring like wildfire beneath the cold embers. The first night's unease. That night, as Amara lay on a carved wooden bed beneath heavy curtains, unfamiliar sounds echoed around her, a symphony of distant calls, rustling silks, and murmured conversations in a tongue both familiar and foreign. Kamau sat nearby, watching her with quiet empathy. "Tonight you begin a new chapter," he said, "and though the road will be treacherous, you do not walk it alone." Amara nodded, a fragile hope blossoming amidst uncertainty. Maru Town's early morning light clawed through the heavy curtains of the Mwangi residence, casting sharp stripes upon the rich tapestries adorning the walls. The air hummed with a muted bustle of servants preparing for the day, while the faint aroma of freshly ground coffee seeped from the kitchen below. Amara's first dawn. Amara lay awake, senses overwhelmed by the grandeur surrounding her, the polished wooden floors, the intricate beadwork, the constant presence of watchful eyes. Gone were the ragged walls of Nandala, replaced by an imposing house that echoed with the unspoken power of generations. Her reflection in the ornate mirror revealed a pale face framed by tangled hair, eyes still wide with uncertainty. She touched her lips gently, feeling the dry remnants of the journey's dust. "Amara," a soft voice whispered from the doorway. Turning, she faced Kamau, whose presence was a comforting tether in this unfamiliar place. "You will find your strength," Kamau promised, "day by day." The gaze of Mwangi. Later that morning, Kamau's father, Chief Mwangi, summoned Amara to the grand hall, a room of polished mahogany and ancestral portraits. The chief's demeanor was stern but not unkind. His eyes regarded Amara with a mixture of appraisal and cold respect. "You are now part of this family," he stated. "Our heritage demands honor and obedience. Understand this well." Amara bowed her head, the unyielding weight of tradition pressing down. "I will do my best." The veil of expectations. Servants and tutors soon surrounded Amara, correcting her posture, teaching the nuances of Mwangi custom. Every word, every gesture scrutinized under the watchful eyes of family and tradition. Kamau watched quietly, a shadow of frustration flickering across his calm exterior. This world is not kind to those who falter. Amara clenched her fist beneath the fabric of her dress, resolve igniting. "Then I will not falter." In Njeri's quiet war, back in Nandala, Njeri faced mounting hardships alone. Her bitterness sharpened into determination, and whispers spread of her restless movements through the village at night. Her fierce love twisted with jealousy and regret, fueling a plan only she understood. "I will reclaim what was lost," she vowed under the moonlight. Seeds of conflict. As days turned into weeks, the Mwangi household grew restless with a tension between tradition and desire. Amara's resilience won some respect, but her outsider status tempered every accomplishment with suspicion. Kamau found himself caught between loyalty to family and love for Amara, a tightrope woven with silence and sacrifice. The heavy rains had returned to Maru Town, drumming steadily against the broad leaves of the banana trees and washing the dust from the red earth. Inside the Mwangi compound, shadows shifted beneath the flickering light of oil lamps as secrets brewed alongside whispered alliances. Kamau and his father. In the grand study lined with leather-bound books and carved ebony shelves, Kamau stood resolute, his gaze locked with that of his father, Chief Mwangi. The tension between them was a palpable force. "You must understand, Kamau," the chief said, voice low but unyielding. "Our family's legacy is not yours alone to challenge." Kamau's jaw tightened. "I honor the legacy, father, but it must evolve. Amara is my choice, my equal, not a transaction." The elder's eyes narrowed. "Be wary. The people may not accept this union. Your mother would have. Kamau interrupted. Please, no more of her. Amara's quiet resistance. Meanwhile, in her chambers, Amara wrapped herself in the vibrant colors of her homeland's cloth, stitching beadwork patterned after the stories her mother once told her. The needle-pierced fabric, a rhythmic defiance in a world determined to script her silence. Her thoughts drifted homeward. Nandala, the fig tree, the worn leather book now cherished and heavy with promise. I will not be trapped by fear or expectation, she whispered to the night. In Njeri's shadow games, far from Maru, beneath the moon's cold gaze, Njeri met with a group of villagers murmuring conspiracies and resentments long buried. They think they can write their own story without balance, she hissed. But I will remind them, the past is never dead. Her plans unfurled carefully, rumors of Kamau falling from grace, whispers of Amara's unworthiness woven through the market, and secret debts to be called in. The community's pulse. Back in Maru town, the Mwangi household's turmoil rippled through markets and meeting places. Elders debated in low voices. Traders speculated where loyalties would land. You mark a dangerous path, said a seasoned trader to his apprentice. Weaves like these tear the fabric of community. A fragile half. Despite the growing storm, Kamau and Amara found moments of fragile peace. By the fire under a blanket of rain, their hands met, a silent promise that no matter the coming darkness, they would face it together. The dry season was nearing its end, and a gentle wind stirred the vibrant jacaranda trees that lined Maru town's main streets, scattering purple petals like whispered secrets upon the dusty ground. In the Mwangi estate, the winds of change stirred too, silent but inexorable. Amara strengthened the storm. In the cool sanctuary of her chamber, Amara traced the patterns of her beadwork again and again, each stitch a pulse of power amid the growing uncertainty. She had learned much in the months since arriving at Maru's grand estate, lessons in dignity, strategy, and the complexities of love strained by tradition. There is no simple path, she often thought, but I can choose how I walk it. Her eyes met the reflection in the mirror, no longer the frightened girl from Nandala, but a woman forging her own destiny. Kamau's veiled burdens. Meanwhile, Kamau carried his father's expectations like a second skin, heavy and suffocating. Their last confrontation lingered in his mind. I will stand by Amara, Kamau promised himself, no matter the cost. Unbeknownst to Amara, Kamau navigated a precarious political landscape, balancing the Mwangi family's powerful alliances while harboring personal doubts about the future. His nights were restless, haunted by questions of loyalty and love. Njeri's growing defiance. Far away, Njeri's machinations deepened. She had gained the ear of influential villagers who resented Kamau's ascension and viewed Amara as an outsider unfit for the Mwangi name. Her whispers traveled unseen through the village, planting seeds of fear and division. This cannot be allowed to stand, she muttered under her breath. For Amara's sake, and mine. A gathering storm. The Mwangi estate prepared for an important family gathering, a ceremony steeped in honor and challenge, where Amara knew the stakes would rise ever higher. She found Kamau in the courtyard beneath the jacaranda blossoms, their faces alight in the golden afternoon. What awaits us? She asked softly. Tests, Kamau replied, of loyalty, strength, and truth. Together, they braced for the storm ahead. The dawn was a pale wash of color over Maru town, a quiet before the storm. The Mwangi estate buzzed with activity, servants preparing for the ceremony that would test the fragile bonds holding the family and Amara's place in it. Together, the ceremony unfolds. The courtyard was transformed with vibrant fabrics, carved symbols, and flickering candles. Elders, relatives, and village leaders gathered, their eyes sharp and voices low with expectation. Amara stood beside Kamau, her heart pounding. Every moment felt weighted with history and consequence. Chief Mwangi began solemnly, his voice echoing in the cool morning air. Today, we witness more than a union. We face a test of loyalty, of truth. Amara's gaze met Kamau's. Together, they prepared to face whatever trials were to come. In Njeri's last gambit. Across the hills in Nandala, Njeri listened to the last thread of her plan weaving into motion. She had called upon old allies and whispered truths twisted with lies. This marriage threatens all we've fought for, she declared to those gathered. It must be undone. Her anger was a tempest, but beneath it lay the deep, fractured heart of a woman desperate to protect what little remained. The test of fire. Back at Maru, the ceremony turned fierce. Questions were posed, not only of lineage and honor but of character and willingness to uphold tradition. Amara faced each challenge with quiet strength, surprising many who had doubted her. Yet the weight was immense, and the eyes of the village weighed heavily upon her. Kamau's support was unwavering, though the strain in his eyes betrayed the cost. The breaking moment. Tensions rose to a crescendo when a long-hidden secret was revealed, a disclosure that threatened to shatter the fragile union and unravel years of carefully guarded truths. Gasps spread through the crowd. Some faces hardened, others dimmed with sorrow. Amara's world wavered. The bright sun climbed steadily over Maru town as silence fell over the Mwangi compound. The aftermath of yesterday's revelations lingered in every corner, strained voices, tentative glances, and hearts torn asunder. The aftermath of truth. Amara sat alone beneath the ancient jacaranda tree, its purple blossoms drifting around her like falling memories. The crowd shock, the whispered rumors, and the fractured trust still echoed in her mind. Kamau approached quietly, his face etched with sorrow and determination. "We face ruin," he said softly, "but also a chance to rebuild." Amara looked up, eyes meeting his, searching for a spark of hope amidst the wreckage. Njeri's final move. Far away in Nandala, Njeri wrestled with the consequences of her actions. Her bitterness had cut deep, unearthing old wounds. Yet, watching from the shadows, she realized the cost. Love lost, bridges burned. "I only wanted to protect," she whispered to the night. "But perhaps I have destroyed more than I saved." The choice. The Mwangi family gathered once more, this time in uneasy truce. Forgiveness was a fragile, tentative thread, one that would either bind them together or unravel everything. Amara stood beside Kamau, their hands intertwined in steadfast resolve. "We have a choice," Kamau declared, "to speak truth, to embrace change, or to be consumed by the past." A new beginning. Together, they face a village and their future, with courage born of pain and hope. Amara's voice rang clear in the gathering dusk. "I am not the girl I was when I came here. I am a woman shaped by love, loss, and the will to forge my own path." The crowd listened, hearts beginning to soften. Epilogue. The echo of tomorrow. Years later, the Mwangi compound was alive with laughter and life. Amara and Kamau had built a family, not just of blood but of chosen bonds. Njeri, older and quieter, finally found peace and reconciliation, visiting often with stories shared and wounds healed. The story of an orphan, a stepmother's cruelty, and the billionaire behind a humble mask became a legend whispered under the jacaranda trees, an enduring tale of resilience, love, and the power of truth. Hello, family. Kindly share with us your thoughts, comments, or opinion. We'd be glad to hear from you on these stories. Thanks for watching Stories with Pablo. Please subscribe and leave us a like. It means a lot to us. You can also share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for doing so.